Welcome to Story 101. These snappy little episodes are designed to be your quick reference guide to story theory. So for those days when you need a refresher, you can pop in and give the episodes a listen and then get back to writing. My name is Melanie Hill. I'm a writer, editor and poet, and I have a passion for spy stories, fairy tales and master detective novels. This episode may contain some spoilers for the books Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens and Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Doughton. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about reading like a writer. So what do I mean when I say this? Well, it's about three things. It's about reading with the intention of improving your craft, reading deep and wide so that you see how different types of stories work, and by asking yourself questions during and after reading. So why would you do it? Well, reading with intention will help you build a library of examples and references to use when you're working through your work in progress. There are so many areas of craft that must come together for a reader to enjoy what you've written. And if you want to write stories your readers will love, then there are the three things that you need to do, which is understand storytelling principles, see how other writers have applied those, and then use them in your own work. So reading like a writer is not about finding fault. It's about making an informed judgment or understanding why you've come to a conclusion. As an editor, when I'm preparing to do a structural edit, I often ask my clients what books resemble the story they are trying to tell. I will then read their recommendation either before I edit or during the editing process. And this really helps me understand what they like, and it gives me examples to draw from when I'm trying to explain key concepts. As a writer, I want to have as many examples of different techniques as possible to help me when I get stuck. So for example, I'm using the movie Eddie the Eagle for genre, for the story structure, and also how the competitions are used for and against Eddie in the story. And I also really am interested in the grumpy and unhappy mentor character in that movie as well, because I have one of those that I want to create in my own story. I also use a kids series, which is about Aussie rules football, and it's called Specky McGee by the author Felice Arena. Now, Specky McGee is a performance story, so again, I use it as an example of genre. But I also use it as a good reference for my target audience because it's roughly the same age as Felice Arena's. So it's a good reminder for me about sentence length and syntax that's age appropriate. So how do we start to hone writer reading skills? When we read like a writer, we look for things that worked and things that didn't work. We ask ourselves questions and search for the answers. Now, the following three questions are a good place to start if you haven't done this before or it's something that you need to start doing. So ask yourself, what did you notice? What did I like about a story and why? And what didn't I like about a story and why? Now, contrasting books can also be a helpful thing to do. So we can find different ways to do the same thing, or we can see how authors use the same techniques to create different effects. So I'm going to give you an example of a comparison that I've done with the two novels Where the Crawdads Sing and Boy Swallows Universe. So what did I notice? Well, first of all, Crawdad starts when Kaya is very young. She's abandoned by her mother, her siblings and father, and she's left to fend for herself. I also realised that marshes are not the same as swamps. And the story ends after Kaya's death, and then the truth of the murder is revealed. Now, that is a very long span of time for one story, and the book is also divided into two parts. Now, what did I like and why? Well, I loved the lyrical language, the use of assonance when describing the marshes and wildlife. This brought the marshes alive for me, and at times I felt like I was there. Now, I'm also a poet, so words and the effect they have fascinate me. And in this book, there are a lot of soft and long S, O, and L words and sounds in the descriptions of the marshes throughout each season, as well as really beautiful descriptions using the same effects for light. Now, the marshes also become a character in the story. It hides and protects Kaya, and it also rewards her for her observations of the flora and fauna over time. Now, what didn't I like and why? Well, the story changed halfway through. It went from being a worldview primary genre, so Kaya's experience of the world and her challenges that she faced, into a murder mystery. Now, I personally don't enjoy that when it happens. So it seemed like the author didn't know what type of story that they were writing. And when that happens, I'm taken out of the story and find myself wondering what happened and how did we get here? Now, here's how Boy Swallow Universe compares. So what did I notice? Well, it's written in first person in a part of Brisbane that is close to where I live. It's graphic, but not in a gratuitous way. There are laugh out loud moments and a mystery element as well. The title is a 3-word tagline in the same style as tabloid newspapers. So what did I like about Boy Swallow's Universe and why? Well, this novel has great characters. They are not always the most likeable characters, but they are portrayed with respect and handled with care by the author. Dalton recreates Eli's world with meticulous, visceral vividness. And this book is funny. It is laugh out loud funny in places. And it is nice to actually laugh while you're reading a novel. And it shows you how immersive and how powerful the written word can be. So what didn't I like about Boy Swallow's Universe and why? Well, there are elements of fantasy in the story that didn't work for me. By that I mean the red phone, for those of you who have read it. These were passages that really caused me to leave the story and wonder what was going on at that point and why this was happening. It didn't make much sense to me in the story at those points. Now, I have filed both of these books into good examples of poetic devices in prose and also in coming of age. But Boy also goes into fantasy elements in non-fantasy stories, and Crawdad goes into breaking genre rules. So this is how I'm mentally filing these stories or writing notes about these stories. When we read these books next to each other, they offer great insight into voice and place to reinforce the protagonist's character development. Both stories are about children who grow up in poverty and their struggle to create something positive out of circumstances they didn't choose. Both stories tell the reader about the impact the places where they grew up had on Eli and Kaya's childhoods and the rest of their lives. So both have places that shape their protagonists. The effects the authors are trying to achieve are very different. For Dalton, Dara, where Eli spent his early years, is a mix of childhood nostalgia and the harsh reality of Eli's parents being drug dealers and his babysitter being an ex-crim. Now, Boy Swallow's Universe is actually semi-autobiographical, so it's a very interesting read. Both stories describe locations using metaphor. They create deliberate impressions and use specific poetic devices. So, for example, the descriptions of place in Boy use short vowel sounds, and Dalton peppers you with short, sharp sounds, graphic images, and he uses repetition and trochaic and spondaic meter in his writing. So there are other questions that can get you into a writer reading headspace, and you can think of your own, but here are some that I think are really good and helpful as memory joggers. So what is the story structure? And what does this tell us about the author's intent? Who is telling the story? So this relates to the point of view, but goes deeper and touches on the voice and the style of narration. So, for example, is the narrator reliable? What makes you believe that they are or aren't? What is the person telling the story trying to say, and what argument are they making? What is the change in the character from the start of the book compared to how they finish at the end of the book? And what purpose does each character serve in the story? And then I think one that's really important and growing in importance for me is what is continually repeated in the story and why is it repeated? So reading like a writer and creating your own reference library may also help you solve problems like which point of view should I use and how do I write fast-paced action scenes? If you can get a few good examples of that, it will help you enormously if you become stuck or you haven't done that type of writing before. I'm really fascinated by creating this library and reference and having quick references for myself. And I think it's something that we need to do more of or become more aware of as writers. So for the past few months, I've been posting via social media quick summaries of books with a focus on what's in them for readers. Now you can find these on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Melanie Hill Author. Reading like a writer is a skill that you must develop, but it's fun and rewarding. You love reading, so asking yourself questions about books shouldn't be a big next step. So that's it for me from some tips on how to read like a writer. If you'd like to support our show, please leave us a rating and review and tell your writer friends about us. If you'd like to find more out about books to help you read like a writer and other writing things, please visit me on Facebook and Instagram under Melanie Hill Author, or find out more about me at melaniehill.com. And remember, story theory doesn't have to be difficult. It's a tool to help you write more, not less. So take it one step at a time and have fun.